Usually we have a break in between our gameplay section and our interview section, but this week we're not doing that. So everybody who is still here has to stay tuned for the ads, because there are some very important ads. Not one, but two this particular session. Anna had pitched two books that are free for downloading. Oh, well, one is free for downloading. The other one is just a good book that you should also read if you're going to read both of them. But anyway, why don't you tell us about those books?
Sure. And you can see me and everything's good?
Yep, everything looks good. You sound great. Cool. Yeah.
I came into this whole field of study because I tripped over a book. I literally stumbled across a book back in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A really long time ago. And I discovered a book by a guy who became my mentor at Penn, Brian Sutton Smith, who is probably top 5 most important writers in the study of play that I think ever was. I mean, just an actual genius. Someone who, when he lectured, you would sit at the edge of your chair and almost fall off your chair because there was so much going on. So I moved to Philly to study with Brian at Penn. And his main book was called The Ambiguity of Play, 1997, Harvard University Press. Where he basically says everything we think we know about play is really just rhetoric and a perception, and all these different disciplines look at play differently. So psychologists look at play one way, educationalists another way, mathematicians, sociologists, all these different ways, different rhetorics. And so one of the books that I was plugging is in honor of his 100th birthday. He's no longer around. And my two co-editors at the International Journal of Play, Fraser Brown and Michael Patt, we got together and we said we should do something to honor Brian because they're fans of Brian's too. So we had this book, I think it's called Brian Sutton Smith, Playful Scholar, a Centennial Celebration. And the reason why I'm plugging it is I think one of the most concise chapters I've ever written about his work is in that book. And it actually has a bit of a mnemonic device in it that I won't give away. So it has like a game describing all of his ideas about playing game. So that's one of the books. And the other one is this one, which is truly free and massive. And I don't know anyone who's actually read it cover to cover because it's just so massive. But it's an edited volume that I did with my buddy from University of Sheffield in England, Julia Bishop. And she and I have been folklore friends for many years and have been on panels together at AFS. And we both, when the pandemic began, said, man, this is a really bizarre time and kids are home from school and kids are playing by themselves. I had neighbors who were talking about how they were having play dates on Zoom where one kid would make like half a Lego thing and then hold it up to the screen, and then his friend had the same Legos and they would hold up their construction on the screen, and all these really interesting different ways of playing were emerging. So we put out a call to everybody we knew in all different, the anthropologists, the folklorists, psychologists, and said, anybody writing about play during the pandemic, let's do a book together. So that became Play in a COVID Frame, Everyday Pandemic Activity in a Time of Isolation. And one thing for you budding writers out there, is it's hard right now to get books to be open access. A very famous press, which I won't name and embarrass, but one that most of you will probably have read many books by, said, I'm not joking, they said, oh yeah, you can make your book open access, but you have to pay us $14,000 ahead of time.
No
lie. 14,000. And I said, well, do you want to take it out of our non-existent royalties? And they said, no, you have to pay cash. This is a really well-respected, like one of the top 3 academic presses. And I said, in polite language, hell no. And we wanted it to be open access because this was about a pandemic that was affecting the world. I didn't feel, Julia and I both felt that it was right to profit off of it. We wanted it to be truly an open access book. So we found an amazing publisher, Open Book Publishers, and it cost us nothing and it costs you nothing. So that's the way I think publications should be. So those are the 2 books that I'm plugging right now.
Yes, and for those just joining us, those are in the ads featured this week for break ads. But there's also one other one that I think we should plug at the top of the hour, because there's a registration link that people can now, as of like several hours ago, actually register for, and that is the basically the prize-winning panel for the Folklore and Science section of the American Folklore Society conference, or American Folklore Society. Every year, I'm part of the section, Anna's part of the section, and many people who've been on the show are part of this business section of in the intersection. Yeah, technically. Kaitlyn too, technically.
Technically, I attended like 2 meetings and then I overbooked myself.
That happens to the best of us. Folklorist, we have enthusiasm for many subjects, but one that we are obviously both very passionate about, all of us are passionate about, is the intersection between folklore and science. And Anna, this year, won the senior prize that section offers for a paper or an article, chapter, whatever, that gets sent in, and we do a review process for it, and you won. And so because you won, we host a webinar that has 2 other scientists, broadly defined, that are not folklorists, but that enhance the conversation that your paper presented, this intersection between folklore and science. And that is taking place on February 12th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And check out the ads for more information, and we'll drop a link to register for that. But is there anything else that you want to add to that discussion, or just
I'm
tell
just
people
very
to go?
honored. I'm very humbled by it. I'm laughing because a bit of family folklore. My mom was in the first class of high school students in New York that accepted women for the Bronx High School of Science.
Whoa,
And
that's
I think
awesome.
she's smiling right now. So I went there
Aw.
too, but it was co-ed, for a long, long time. But
Sure.
there's something, if you had said that an article of mine would have been recipient of a science award, my family would have been tickled by that.
Aw.
I'm also really honored because one of my mentors from my pen days is going to be one of the discussants, Dr. Fred Erickson, who I just adore. He's really an educational anthropologist whose area of expertise is qualitative methods specifically related to video and gesture. And he would love this game. I
Oh
kept
my
thinking about
gosh.
Fred and gestures. So
Yeah.
his mentor, I just have to name drop this other
Yeah.
scholar's name. And if you want to put this, Kaitlyn, in the chat, if anybody in this game is interested in actual gesture study, the man to read is Adam Kendon, Kendon, who's written literally like the books on gesture study. And I could rattle them off, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. So look up Fred Erickson and look up Adam Kendon.
I've read some of Catherine Young's work in
Catherine Young,
folklore and body lore and gesture and some of that, but I haven't gotten sucked down the rabbit hole too much of gesture, although I don't know, I might end up going in some direction like that.
Catherine was a big fan of Adam Kendon's as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, now that we've plugged a couple things to keep an eye out for when we go to break, I'm going to officially commence the interview by doing one last thing, and that is something that we do every single week on this show. And that is to thank our sleuthing team. So you as in the royal you, the people, the audience, but also Anna here. You might see me on screen, and or maybe you see Dom on screen, and you're like, oh, there's just 2 people on the show, and that's the only people who do things on the show. And you would be sorely mistaken, because we have a whole team of people behind the scenes. One of whom is here behind the scenes as the disembodied voice today. That is Kaitlyn Kinney. But we get together and create questions as a group, and we have sleuths every single week, do deep dives on our guests, anything that's available on the internet about you, anything on social media, stuff that help us make better and really good questions. So if you hear a question that you like, people in chat, if you are like, oh, I had that question too, or whatever, don't thank me, thank the sleuthing team. And there's an emote in the chat if you are a tier 1 subscriber that you can also spam if you thought that was really good, so we can thank the sleuths the whole time during the interview. And with that, are you ready for your first official interview question, Anna?
Woohoo!
All right. Okay, our first question. what is micro-ethnography, and what does it look like when you're working with children?
Oh, wow. Interesting questions with very different answers. So, microethnography came out of anthropology. The idea, and specifically with the work of Adam Kendon, but also Gregory Bateson, I don't know if that's a name that you guys recognize. And the idea was to look at video footage or film footage and to take it out of its larger context and just look at it within the frame of the film or the video itself.
Okay.
And to break it down into micro scenes and to look at it like discourse analysis and examine who said what and what they said and what the references were, but also to look at it non-verbally, specifically interested in gesture study. And Fred Erickson really is the guy who was
Cool.
looking at microethnography and the study of children. It's interesting because then it brings us into the second question, which has to do with the complexity of the ethics of research when videotaping kids. And so back when I was doing my dissertation on a Philadelphia playground in the early 90s, all you had to do was get basic negative permission from a school and a principal. Negative permission meaning if you don't want to be part of this study, sign this form.
Right.
And then if the staff said thumbs up and no parents objected, you could just video and you would make it anonymous. You can't do that anymore. So videotaping children is much more complicated, which is mostly a good thing. You know, it's important to protect kids' identities, but it's also made it much more difficult to study children scientifically because of all the hoops that you have to go through. Now, folklorists sometimes, and I'd love to hear your perceptions as either grad students or recent students, folklorists sometimes can get away with not having to go through an institutional IRB, institutional review board, because folks who are doing like oral history or, you know, generic humanities type information gathering, it's assumed that it's somehow kosher and you just have to get basic permission. If you're doing anything with children, it is a protected class of people, and it becomes the realm of science and not humanities, the social science things. And so you have to jump through many hoops to prove that no harm is done, and no identification is going to be done of the children. And that is, it's doable, it's possible. I was able to do that over in England, but it took months of very much like this video game, you know, this game online, you know, you go to the door is locked, the key is back in the other institution, you go backwards and you have to learn the code. Watch the process of getting approval. But it's possible, and there are ethical ways of having it done. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think that answers your question, because I guess I'm like trying to bring them together like this. Something that we didn't realize was that microethnography was like, it came out of film studies. Like we thought that it was like a moment, but that makes sense because you have to like stabilize a moment, and so film makes sense to stabilize the moment. Otherwise, because we're just experiencing many moments all the time, and like so that makes a lot of sense. Like about how do you like freeze a moment? I guess we were thinking like kids are so squirrely. What moment do you choose to freeze is another kind of layered question. Like,
isn't that the same question as what any folklorist like? What do you choose to? What story do you choose to record? And what you know, what songs do you choose to record?
Right.
What images do you choose to photograph? So you're always editing. You're always eliminating variables and trying to figure out what's the most important story here. What's the most important object? At least to the people, not to you necessarily, but what do the people say is the revered object? So even in this, back to this video game and this fictitious, you know, civilization, we might think that star-shaped thing is the most important deity, but it might turn out the cat is the most important thing, or that it might be some other object. So we have to figure what the rules are according to the locals.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
How is sound, not necessarily songs, but sound, an essential part of children's folklore in the way that kids make sense of the world around them?
Oh, such an interesting question. So again, if I'm stalling, it's only because I see your mouth moving and I'm not hearing anything. It must be that my internet is buffering at the time or something.
It's possible.
So if you need to interrupt me, feel free. Sound, you say. So the earliest recordings of children's folklore, especially on playgrounds, were all about the sound. So, you have the classic collections of Iona and Peter Opie, and even Brian Sutton Smith in his early studies in New Zealand, where he was from. It was all about recording the sounds, recording the songs, playing those audio things back to different generations, getting their commentary. It's interesting because the films that I made, the research film that I made in England recently, recent project, have no sound at all. No sound at all. And partially because, not unlike the Tower of Babel, there were 100 different languages spoken on one playground. It was a migrant community.
Whoa.
100?
100?
Over 100.
Wow.
Right. So, and in order not just to deal with translation issues, but because of identity protection, if people are migrants, they're, for good reason, often very frightened, especially of authority figures or people who are outside their community. So I decided not to deal with sound at all. And with kids, it can be an issue if you're collecting singing games or stories. Obviously, you need sound and translation. But if you're looking at objects, if you're looking at the moving body, design play, it's kind of not necessary.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're after. It depends on what you're curious about, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I guess we were inspired in part by the article that you wrote about pen tapping. And just thinking of like these little sounds that are often stigmatized, whether it's like due to racism or mental health, classism, ableism, whatever it is, like these little moments where kids are actually being creative, where otherwise you might think that they're just doing something either at worst disruptive on purpose and at most menial, just like doing it because that's how brains work or something. But they're actually doing a kind of creative thing through sound that people usually think that sound equal music or nursery rhymes or whatever.
Right. But what's interesting, it's not just creative.
Yeah.
They're playing with cultural scripts. They're playing with sound bites and trying to digest them, which I think is really interesting. And what you've touched on is something that's really important to me, which is the idea, especially in children's folklore, but it's true of almost all folklore study, is that things that other people sometimes dismiss as being trivial, minor, unimportant, stupid in some kind of way, often carry profound meaning. And often the trivialization of it is related to issues of power, race and class, gender, all kinds of things. So it's interesting to me I try to find what are people excited by? And then how are those things, those motifs, those themes, those forms of excitement, how are they treated in the larger worlds of power? Are they treated with respect? Usually not. Are they pushed aside? Are they trivialized? Are they funded? Are they not funded? Are they put up on a pedestal and not touched? So to see how the things that people are excited by are then situated in these frames, these larger discussions of power, is really, I think, what makes folklore and folk art discussions really, really exciting. Whether you're looking at a particular kind of craft and how it's treated, or a particular song, or in the case of pen tapping, something that looked just like a trivial thing. There were so many grown-ups that when I asked, even anthropologists, I asked, what do you think of pen tapping, or what do you know of pen tapping? They'd say, oh, I hate it. It's noise. It's bothersome. It means the kids aren't paying attention. And I'm thinking, no, you're not paying attention. You're missing that they're trying to send you a signal about what's inside them that's really, really important to them. So Love pen tapping. I'm delighted that you
Yes.
found that article.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, we were like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. It was making this, yeah, just kind of like fire off. So that's always a sign of a good
Woo!
rabbit hole, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
Another-
isn't that what we do? We're looking for
Yeah.
good rabbit holes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as the burrows never end. That's kind of the
Yeah.
or they end and then you find a new passageway or whatever.
Yeah.
Because you're already
Yeah.
Or
underground.
eventually they intersect and connect.
Ooh.
Ooh.
And then you meet the gopher, and then you meet the fox, and then okay. Anyway, sorry. This is like.
Then suddenly your
Okay.
neighbor's house cat has gone down the hole just to check things out.
Just to check it out. Yeah. We have another question for you.
Yeah, please.
You've defined folklore as cultural recycling. What parts of culture were recycled through techno medium of Zoom during the pandemic?
Oh, wow. Many. And I don't want to give away my that's happening in a couple of weeks.
Just a taste.
But
Just a
that's
taste of the talk.
Just a taste of the talk. So the taste of the talk is that I had a friend who was explaining all these Zoom play dates, which I found fascinating. I mean, now we're all really comfortable on Zoom, on Twitch, or whatever. You know, it's like no big deal to be talking and laughing with someone. But at the time, especially for kids, to have a play date on Zoom when you have certain objects in your house and they have certain objects in their house, and how it all looked like chaos. You know, the moms would say, you know, it's just like a bunch of horsing around in chaos. So I was looking again for what are the hidden gems? When are the kids excited? And I really don't want to give away that talk, so you're going to have to
Okay.
and like that.
That's very fair.
Mhm.
But when we were thinking about this idea of like cultural recycling as
Yeah,
being a
let's go back
cool
to
way to
that.
think about like what, you know, parts of, like the sort of like, you know, the conservatism, dynamism, some stuff stays the same, some stuff
Yeah.
changes, but recycling
Right.
is an interesting way to think about that because it's kind of, it's not getting rid of, it's not replacing, and it's not
No.
repairing, it's transforming. And I just think that, so like thinking or picking apart of like the things that are the patterns in similarities that might look different. Like, I don't know, I guess
Yeah.
you were making me think about like pen tapping versus fidget spinner. Like, it's kind of a
Yeah,
recycled, like, I don't know, there's
well,
the
let's-
recycle, take me there. Yeah.
Let's go back there. So the pen tapping, which looks like on a surface level like a nervous, you know, foot stomping fidget spinner. If you go to that article, I was able to look at the specific rhythm of the pen tap because we were able to superimpose some different kinds of songs on the film, and it was interesting to see where those songs came from, what genres they came from, what the specific rhythmic patterns came from. And it's the same kind of thing when I think back to other studies of, let's say, fairy tales, you know, just as an example, classic example of fairy tales. There's so much study of the variant. So you have the Cinderella tale from China, and then you have the Cinderella tale from Persia, and you have the Cinderella tale from the American Southwest. And you can look at all these Cinderella tales, and it's the same kind of thing. It's the same shape. Now we're talking about tale types. We're talking about motifs, right? But they're looping differently. They're looping differently. So I like this image of, instead of the static genre, I like the idea of the act of recycling, the act of looping as what a folklorist is actually doing in the engagement with the material. Is that the other metaphor that I often use describing what folklorists do is not just that we're looking at the cultural recycling, but that we're motif hunting.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a game metaphor, that we're hunting for the motif, for that essential thing. Cinderella, the glass slipper, obviously, but we're hunting for that central thing, and then we're seeing how it spins out in all these different, and then how it gets recycled. How does it emerge in the playground in a jump rope? How does it get taken from the jump rope rhyme into, then spin back out onto the playground? So, you know, it's this looping, recycling, and the hunt for the interesting motif that is interesting for me.
I don't know if it's just like I don't know. Maybe this is so you're making me think about like different, maybe it's the spinning, but different the ways that different kinds of seeds of trees fall. And how they like have different shapes to adapt to being carried on the wind or whatever. It's like they're all seeds of trees. Okay, they're all like a specific type of seed, but the way that they have spun out into their environment is really interesting. And that's what it's making me think of like that same kind of, it's a similar pattern being literally spun into the environment with some kind of like the affordances of that environment or whatever it is. That's so interesting.
And there was a phrase that the great Barbara Kirschenbach Gimblett used, BKG. I don't know if you know her name.
We call her the notorious BKG.
Notorious BKG. I love it. So the notorious BKG, Barbara Kirschenbach Gimblett, the worst name to spell ever.
Yeah.
And one of the pioneers of teaching courses of children's folklore. She talked about one of my new favorite phrases, anticipatory heritage, in a recent Journal of American Folklore edition. Anticipatory heritage. So part of the challenge is that we're trying to capture, in whatever medium we capture, whether it's by sound or in photography or videography or how, through interview, we're trying to capture these motifs and these genres and these moving traditions now, not necessarily knowing how significant they're going to be. So the same thing back to the COVID book. Julia and I knew that capturing that moment was important. We didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. We didn't know how, the extent it was going to be globally, but we intuited that this was something major, drastic, and a unique opportunity in the world. And we needed to do this anticipatory heritage, capturing in that particular moment. So I like that image of these leaves that are twirling, the spinning seeds that are coming down. You don't know what's going to get planted. You don't know where they're going to end. You don't know who's going to eat them. But somehow, at least noticing them is important.
I love, I don't know, now you make me think about just being creative also, is you often don't know why or what you're doing when you are being creative. You just know you have to be doing it. Yeah. And so that makes me, I don't know, think about the pursuit of folklore is I must to document what's happening around me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it will become, the next big thing or not, but something about it feels like intangibly important.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I love that. Yeah.
All right. I have another question for you before we get into some shorter, funsy questions, if that's all right.
At your service, yeah.
What would you like people to know the most about play and its importance to not just childhood, but adulthood?
So I have a new way of thinking about play. I'm going to rewind again. So one of the things that Sutton Smith said to me that really stuck was, if you're going to come up with a theory about play, but you'll notice that my name is Play in Theory. Is it has to be true about all different kinds of types of play. And part of his issue with the rhetorics was that, it's like that old story of the blind man and the elephant, where you do that old Persian tale where some guys are holding the ear and they say, oh, an elephant is flat and like a pancake, and then someone else trunk and say, no, an elephant is like a snake, and someone else will hold the leg. You get the idea. So he said, make sure that if you're writing about play and you're saying things about it based on your research, it has to be true for video games and children's play. It has to be true for animal play. It has to be true for adult play. It has to be cross-referenced across all these different things. So I spent a bunch of time several years ago studying captive gorillas. And I would have loved to have done wild gorillas feasible. So I went to my local zoo, and there were two adolescent gorillas that lived alone. They were in a unit separate from the family unit. You can only have one dude gorilla with a bunch of females. You can't have two dude gorillas. It's not a good idea. So these were the two bachelors who were off on their own, Lewis and Kachimba. And I'll be showing video footage of Lewis and Kachimba at that science talk. So
yeah.
So I spent a couple of years hanging out with Lewis and Kachimba across the glass and interviewing the gorilla keeper at the Philadelphia Zoo, Kristen Farley Rambo. And she and I then co-authored a Play Signals, Play Moves, a gorilla something about play. So why am I telling you all this about gorillas? So by looking at the animal play literature, and I'm going to make another plug for another book that you should put in the chat, and that is the best book on animal play is free from MIT Press by Gordon Burkhardt, B-U-R-K, Burkhardt, H-A-R-D-T, and it's called The Genesis of Animal Play. And it is just amazing. I mean, if you want to learn about the play of octopi and lizards, this is the book for you. So it's just awesome.
Right up my alley.
Oh,
I love to know this.
It's just awesome. And so I realized this is where I needed to start my own thinking about playground play, about children's play, is what do we know that's true based on animals, and how can we build on that? That has to be the basics. So this is a long way of saying, after spending time with that, I began to think about play as being exaggeration. Burkhardt talks about reversal, and he talks about, incomplete actions that look like a real action but aren't quite a real action. There are writers like Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman who wrote a bunch of books about play. One is The Rules of Play, one is The Games Design Reader, real great geeky stuff from MIT Press. And they talk about free movement in a more rigid boundary, a more rigid frame. I much prefer to think of play as exaggeration, but not just any old exaggeration. I'm convinced that all play is social, even when we're playing by ourselves, because we're negotiating with our cultural scripts, we're negotiating with our inner child, we're negotiating with the boundary of the puzzle. So the simplest way for me to describe what play is across these different genres, with lots of little modifications, is play is negotiated exaggeration.
Negotiated exaggeration.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm... Stop! I'm supposed to have brain blasts during my work hour. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Negotiated.
I couldn't tell if you were laughing because it was absurd or because you really liked it.
Oh no, I loved it. I'm like, my brain is like, whoa, like that makes so much sense. Negotiated because the pen tapping is exaggerated. Like just
it's
meaning is all about exaggeration. Like you said, motif hunters, and the first thing that popped into my head is what meme I'll build later.
Yeah.
Right? And how exaggerated that's going to be.
And we're doing, and now we come back to Sutton Smith. This shows his genius. I'm a distiller of information. He was an expander. So he had a great term, and you can find this explained in that article that I mentioned in that book of his centennial birth. He had a great word that you can put in the chat, dialutics.
Dialutics, I love that.
Right, think of dialectic, but put ludic. So ludic, like ludology, the study of games, play. Ludic is the Latin word for play. So the idea of dialutics is that play often is a vessel for the container of opposites. So you can have something that's very silly and very good at the same time, and recognize it as play. You don't have to have either or. You can have both. You can have very, very serious topics done lightheartedly, like Freud's jokes. That's dialutics. Yeah. So he plays with, it's not just dialectic, but also dialogic. It gets into that whole Bakhtinian, now we're really geeking out in grad school, that whole idea of dialogue and engagement. So to me, that goes back to this idea that play is constantly being negotiated. When I'm playing,
Yeah.
I'm negotiating with a chance of dinar, but I'm also negotiating with you. I'm also negotiating with this invisible audience. I'm
Yep.
negotiating with myself in terms of what happened with me previously today and how goofy I'm going to get,
Yeah.
or not. I'm negotiating, also referencing all of these other cultures about all the other play and all the
Yeah.
other games that are similar or not. So there are all of these layers of culture. So there's this interesting tension in a dialutic way between the stretchiness of play, this exaggeration with puppies and octopi
Yeah.
and all kinds of animal play, and also the reality of the boundary of culture and of whatever boundary, whether it's time and space or whatever it is, or your own emotional boundary or lack thereof, that you're constantly stretching and then hitting some kind of boundary. So you're negotiating, excuse me, this tension is the negotiation of exaggeration. That's how I see play.
That is so cool. I have to talk to you about meaning management and subjectivity at some point now, but no. Oh no. A follow-up might happen from me specifically. No, that was super insightful.
And you know what?
Yeah.
And I want to say, I don't know if there's a way to put information in the chat that won't be on the web, but if there's a way, I'm happy to share my email with the people on this in this particular thing. But
that's perfect. People, yeah, if you want to talk to Anna, just reach out to Folkwise. We'll put you in contact. No problem.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
we can definitely facilitate that for sure.
Yeah, happy to cheer anybody on in their hunt.
Also, check out Anna's website.
Yeah, your website rocks. Also, by the way, we'll drop that in the chat too.
Outdated.
Yeah. Also, it's pretty awesome. Your website's great.
Thank you.
I don't know what the sleuths did right to have you like kind of just knowingly set yourself up for the first funsy question in like kind of the most perfect way possible. But we're moving to funsy questions, which are like a little bit shorter, a little bit like kind of goofy stuff about your personal life, cool nuggets of information we found while sleuthing you. But our first question for you is, what's your favorite thing that you learned about animals from Kristen Farley Rambo, the gorilla keeper of the Philadelphia Zoo?
Wow. The most fun thing that I learned is that Lewis, the larger and slightly older male, loved to slam the window and scare the crap out of people who were staring at him.
Oh my gosh.
He would out of nowhere just kind of go into the middle of the room and then charge and smash the frame of the window. And it was very thick. There's no way he could break it. But it always, had people would scream and have this big reaction. And to me, he's trying to negotiate that.
I was just gonna say, isn't that a negotiated exaggeration? Yeah. Like, I'm just gonna watch all of the people go like, ooh. I'm gonna go use my body to like hurl it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like the jump scare.
Like, it's a jump scare.
Your like sibling used to like hide behind a door or like at the top of a staircase and like jump out at you.
Yes.
It's power. It's power. Absolutely.
That's so good.
And it's interesting. Let's loop back to Twitch for a minute.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Here we are watching play as if we're watching it behind glass at a zoo. Twitch is, I really am into this book. I don't know if you've all read it, but this Watch Me Play, which is all about Twitch and the rise of the game line streaming.
That book is
Taylor.
Ebook is available for free for people. I know that it exists online for free. If people want access to it, we can drop that for people who are interested. But that's a great book.
Yeah, but so the idea of the spectatorship of play is very similar to the spectatorship of watching an animal at a zoo.
That's so true. Yeah. I'm thinking about all of the, I don't know, like the top 10 biggest streamers are kind of a little bit like just a bunch of apes anyway. the way that some of some of that behavior has unfolded from what I understand too. So I get it.
Yes.
Yeah. Next funsy question for you.
Yes.
What's a pun that you make that people think is bad, but that you defend? You say that's a good pun.
Oh. Oh. See, one of the hard things about punning is that you can't repeat them.
It's so like
because then they've
emergent.
lost,
Yeah.
they're in the moment, and they have a that only makes sense in that context. All right, here's just an example that was very popular this week amongst my friends. So I do Tai Chi every day, and I have a bunch of friends, and if it's over 32 degrees, we're out in our local park doing Tai Chi.
Awesome.
3 days a week. It's really awesome. It's so zen. It's so
Yeah.
fun. And it's great. I love it. And I had a friend who was really stressed out about her phone. She came like all aggravated, said, I was just at T-Mobile. I don't know if I can say that I was just at T-Mobile and I'm all stressed out. And I said, now you're at Chi-Mobile. And they were like, Chi-Mobile. They were like, Chi-Mobile. So that was, I got a lot of traction.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Right.
I love that. I have another question for you.
Okay.
What pop cultural knowledge did the kids that you work with introduce you to that you love the most?
Which kids?
The one, I suppose the subject of the pandemic book basically is techno mischief, or just any of the kids that you've worked with, like as a researcher. What have they introduced you to that's like pop culture that you were like, oh my gosh, like, but now you love it?
Well, you know what? I'm at the point in my career where I have had many research projects. So,
yeah.
You know, the first book, Recess Battles, Playing, Fighting, and Storytelling, there was a longitudinal study. And so I kept going back to that one playground for a long time. And the joke in the introduction was I started it when my firstborn kid was in a backpack on my back. And when the book got published, he was shaving.
Oh my gosh.
True.
That's pretty funny. That's a funny scale of time also way to think about
Mhm.
like the production of scholarship too.
Right.
Yeah.
So so there's been a lot of pop references. Man, what's the most fun pop reference? I think the most interesting one, I'll flip it a little, was in that study in Recess Battles. It became a thing for kids to try to see if I was cool with curse words.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
especially if songs, like could they sing me songs? I had a mobile Marantz tape recorder at the time before phones had even better recording devices than the Marantz did. And so it was a thing for them to, you know, can we say parts of genitalia anatomy into this microphone? Are we going to?
Yeah.
And I assured them they could say anything they want. So that was like the biggest.
Oh my god.
You know, excitement and introduction to some pop songs that I hadn't known about. That by today's standards seem tame. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
But that was fun. It's always, I mean, the best part about fieldwork, especially for kids, with kids, is what you learn. But you come to the table in order to be schooled by the people that you're studying, and they introduce you to all kinds of stuff. So that's part of the great joy of the journey. Yeah.
So I did almost write "stan" in this question as the phrase, like what do you stan the most that the kids brought to your attention or something, and I was like, wait, and Anna will get like that, right? And they were like, well, yeah, I think Anna knows like the slang for kids these days, right? Something like that. Do you feel up to snuff on your like on your slang knowledge, or was that sort of like a particular like era of kid?
You know what? It changes so
fast.
So fast.
That's true.
And my head, I'll be honest, the fieldwork that I'm going through now, I'm working on the book that's coming out of this Fulbright experience from the UK.
Yeah.
And there it wasn't so much slang as it was just understanding the thick Yorkshire dialect. So there was this one, I did a bunch of volunteering in different programs that dealt with play in order to earn my keep. And my favorite was this little boy who came up to me and he said, "Can I have a cup?" And I didn't know what the heck he was saying. Cup?
Yeah.
Cup. And I realized that he wanted a cup. I said, "Oh, here's a cup." You know,
like, oh, that's funny.
And it was also kind of funny because of I was at a place where there are hardly any Americans that go there. People would literally say, like, "You're from the States, the United States, those states? Like, are there any other states that you know?"
Yeah.
So I would often not speak when I was around kids because I didn't want to become the center of attention. As soon as I opened my mouth, it's like, where are you from? Say football. Do you play football?
Say this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because it's interesting, you brought up that other question, sound. So much of my earlier work was about recording singing games and sound and hand clap games and stuff like that. But this stuff in England was all about material culture. So because of the language and the 100 different languages spoken, there's no sound at all there's stories, but there's no sound at all in the recordings. And so I've kind of turned that part of my brain off.
Yeah.
So when you ask about slang, I was like, I'm not thinking in a slangy kind of. So it's interesting.
I get that. All right, last question, and this is a food-related question.
A food-related question.
So,
I'm just getting hungry.
This was a specific special request from our often co-host Dom Tartaglia, who really, really, really wanted to know where to get a cheesesteak in Philadelphia. The best place, if there's a best place.
There are definitely great places. I have to confess, I'm a vegetarian.
I was okay, and so the next part was follow-up question. I've been vegan for like 10 years. I wanted to know if there was a place to get a vegetarian cheesesteak.
If there is, I haven't had a good one yet.
Okay, that's fair.
I have 3 grown sons.
Yeah.
And I could find out, where they would say the best cheesesteak is. I know that the places that are the most are not the best ones.
Okay, don't go to the famous one. Go to
don't go to the famous. There's like a famous trio, right? Go to the underground ones. But I am totally the worst person to ask about.
That's so funny. I like that too. People always ask me where to eat, and I'm like, do you like Asian food? Because yeah.
Do you like? There's pierogi place that we went to.
Yeah, it was like, do you like the pierogi place? Yeah, there's a great pierogi place in Columbus that has vegan pierogies. But that's so funny. So okay, we'll return back to you at some point for cheesesteak recommendations. Yes, that's like in Columbus or like in Cincinnati in Ohio. Everybody's like, where do you go get Cincinnati chili? And it's definitely not Skyline chili. Some people are into Skyline, but there's like actual good like mom and pop shops that we've spent a lot of an investment in on this channel. We've talked about Cincinnati chili a bunch of times, but that's a good example. It's like you don't go to like the franchise. You go to like the little one. Gotcha.
Not going to Gold Star Skyline.
Yeah.
You're going to the mom and pop place across the Ohio state line.
There you go. Because that's where you'll get the real deal.
Oh my gosh, Grand Admiral is giving us a person in chat. Grand Admiral Thrawn 13 is giving us some places that are not good. I want to hear about the places that are good.
Listen, he's giving us places. Like, it's pulled up in Google. We know no Genos and Pats.
Yeah, exactly. No Genos, no Pats. That's very.
I think there's a place called Delisandro's that might like. There's cool. There's a whole bunch of places down in Italian Market area.
Got it. Well, that concludes our formal end of our questions, but we still have one more thing to do with you, and that is make a tier list. Kaitlyn, would you talk to Anna about a tier list while I queue it up for you all backstage?
Wow. I think this is my first time in like a year.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, are you ready? Got it?
Yes, I think I got it because we don't generally do tier lists when I'm on.
It's true. Yeah.
I'm usually off on like a weird side quest for Folkwise.
Yeah.
So tier list started with fighting games, and it became a way for people to start ranking things in their everyday lives. So like, well, initially it started with like ranking their favorite characters in a fighting game from a scale of S, which is like the highest you can reach, all the way to D, which is the lowest, and then you can create special tiers.
Why S and D?
It's the fighting game standard. That's like how it is in fighting games. And I think it's based on the Japanese like alphabet system, or like grading system. So I think that's why.
Got it.
Yeah. But there's these places like, tiermaker.com where people are creating lists about pizza.
Yeah.
And their favorite cat breeds and other silly things. The amount of lists out there.
There's too many.
It's too many.
Is this like the late night talk show guys who have like the top 10 thing?
Yep.
And this, from 10 to 1, these are,
Yeah, this is like after you come back from break on Jimmy Fallon and you have to, we subject you to a kind of parlor game.
There you go.
So if you haven't clicked watch stream, I would recommend doing that now, because we found normally we have to spend a lot of time curating some of these, but lucky for us, the kind of best version of what we have here is a Recess Games tier maker already existed. And I know these like words are really small. I'll read them out to you. It's
yes, please.
But we thought that there's probably no better person alive right now to help us rank recess games that kids play on the playground, and the criteria of evaluation is entirely up to you. So it's not it could be based on like which one you played the most and you like the most, which ones caused the least amount of accidents, which ones people should play more, whatever you want to say as the criteria. Oh my gosh, we're already getting good questions in the chat. What the F is butts up and sardines? Well, we'll get into it. First, on this scale of S to D, actually, this particular tier list added an F tier too. So if you like really, really hate something, you can get an F. But
so the red is the highest praise, and the green is.
Yep, red is the highest. Great. It's like above A, superior, super, like 101%, and then all the way down at the bottom is F, 0, like the worst. And this will scale vertically and horizontally, so you can put multiple things in one category, and whatever's closest to the left is the highest, and whatever's closest to the right is the lowest. And you can change them throughout this too. It can be massaged as you develop your ideas here. But the first recess game on here is tag. So where would you rank tag of recess games?
Oh, definitely second to the top.
Okay, A. All right, tag is A. There's so many different ways to play tag. Now this, I will say, this one just says tag, just basic, regular tag. Because the next one we have is capture the flag. And we have some other versions of tag later too. But what do you think about capture the flag?
I'm a fan. I used to love playing capture the capture the flag. Can multiple ones have this?
Yes.
I would give it a 4. Or whatever that is. I can't see it. It's not a 4, it's an A.
A? Okay, I was like, is that an A? Okay. And is capture the flag better or worse than tag?
I'd say tag is slightly superior because it has so many more variants.
Okay, perfect. Well, speaking of variants, we also have freeze tag.
Yep.
I like
classic.
Freeze tag.
Freeze tag is also classic. I would put freeze tag. I would put it in between tag and
capture the flag.
Capture the flag. Yeah.
Awesome. Tag is very fun. Yeah, there are so many different ways to play. All right, next.
Do you know about COVID tag?
No, what's COVID tag? Is it like?
Oh, there's so many variants about COVID tag during the pandemic.
Cootie
and there's
tag.
a whole chapter there's a whole by Julie, this serious scholarship about her research on COVID that she did on Twitter. It's fascinating
Wow.
during the pandemic. So yeah, kids would have. If you get tagged, you got sick. If you got tagged 3 times, you die. If you got an injection, back to. There's all these fascinating.
Oh yeah, you can like.
COVID.
Yeah, you can like play teams and like lift people up and. Yeah, right. Oh my
Awesome.
gosh, that's so interesting. Up next is Foursquare.
Well, there's 2 kinds of Foursquare, right? So there's the
true.
online Foursquare and the ball bouncing game. I'm not a huge Foursquare fan personally of either of those games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're okay. I know people get a lot of pleasure out of it. I would, whatever the yellow is
That's a
I feel
C.
like I'm getting it.
That's a C.
I feel like I'm getting an eye chart here.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
I know they're quite small. It goes like S A B C D F.
Okay.
So
now I
that's
get it.
kind of
Okay,
the
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. C. Foursquare is a C. Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like I remember waiting in line a lot to play Foursquare, and that was kind of boring.
Oh.
Yeah, but
I
when you
think
get
it's-
conversations in the sidelines,
That's
where,
true,
like, you're
sort
kind
of-
of talking
yeah.
smack a
It's
little.
the water cooler. That's true. It's sort of like the water
Yeah.
cooler, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
What?
hate anything that makes you wait.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Well, what about Butts Up?
Butts up. So,
Which Grand Admiral did, our friend in the chat, did say, what is Butts Up?
all right, who's gonna Google this definition?
I
You
was
or
like,
me?
I know, I was like, I
So-
feel like I need to Google it. Yeah.
This could be me.
Yeah, Caitlin, could you see what Google
You're
says
gonna
on
get all
Butts
kinds
Up?
of interesting.
Somebody
nuts.
Google Butts Up. Oh gosh.
Because, like, my.
Well, I mean, I know what I associate
Oh!
the game of Butts
Yeah.
Up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So. It's kind of like it's played with a ball.
Yeah.
So, like a tennis ball on a paved
Yep.
surface against a wall.
Yeah, you like
Right.
throw the ball at the wall.
Yeah.
And
Like-
Right. So
Yeah. I feel like I
So-
definitely heard it being called wall ball at my school growing up.
So
Wall
yeah.
ball, yeah.
So there's all these different variants about it in chess battle. So there's wall ball. There's sui or suicide ball,
Mhm.
also known as Polish handball. There's something called chink, which unfortunately sounds racist, but I think it had to do. And
Oh, with
there's
the type
red,
of oh, sorry, you cut out with
Right.
the type of wall.
the chink in the wall.
Oh, okay.
And then like missing tile or whatever. And I think Butts Up is red, which is a kind of a pegging similar, where you can get pegged in the butt if you fumble the ball.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense now too. Now that okay, yes, I see full circle.
So,
well, where do we rank?
Deathlorist.
Yeah.
Deathlorist. Was there anything else that I needed to know in your exploration of?
That sounds absolutely correct.
Okay, there we go. Woo! So I personally would give that a B.
A B. Okay, B for
Yeah,
butts.
I think B for butts. It's an interesting set of variations. Not
That's
something
true,
that I
yeah.
personally would be into, but I respect it.
I feel like there's a lot of depth to Butts Up that is being like unconsciously explored. Something I don't know. I mean, I guess these all are, but that one seems there's layers there.
Well, one of the things, I know we're running out of time. One of the it gets into the whole punishment aspect, the whole mean aspect of play. So much of play is romantic, positive mind, but play is like any kind of communication. Like you have kind speech and you have obnoxious. So why wouldn't play be also? So red butts up. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Now we also have handball, which I think
Handball.
it is different but similar to Butts Up, kind of.
Yeah, right. I would put it adjacent.
Okay.
It's again, our handball or wall ball variation.
Mhm.
Some are more competitive. Some you have to play. If the smaller the space, the more likely you're going to have to bounce the ball as opposed to something that has long space to lay the ball from.
Got
So
it.
yeah, handball.
There's like a bounce in between.
Yeah.
A couple more ball games. Dodgeball.
Dodgeball, again, very similar. I'd put it adjacent. I remember playing a lot of it. I was never any good at ball games. You know, that's something, and it's funny because my sweetie is, you know, he only played growing up. And, you know, way, but I respect them. But they don't, to me, have of tech genre.
Fair enough. Dodgeball was the one I was always afraid to play. People were gonna hit me
It's
really
scary.
hard with the
Absolutely.
Loved dodgeball, admittedly.
you would.
I was like such
You're
a
like,
chaos monster as a small child. It's like wars on our like open area soccer field, elementary school, and then we were not allowed to touch sticks anymore.
Aw.
Aw, not the sticks. Up next we have kickball, which I was really into kickball. I liked playing kickball.
I would put it again adjacent to butt ball, whatever it is called.
But
They're all to me very similar.
okay, are any of them rank higher or lower than the others? Like, would you put kickball in front of butts up, or is it fine at the end here?
No, I think it's just fine. We're
Okay,
kick to the end.
cool. Up next we have hide and go seek.
Ah,
Now this is hide and
wow.
go seek's pretty good.
Yeah, well, hide and go seek and tag are very similar. I would
Yeah.
put hide and go seek top of the list. S for me.
S tier, hide and seek S tier. I love
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to play, and you have to be so
There's like
creative.
strategies, and then like you communicate your strategies to your friends because you want to last the longest.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
like form packs. I don't know how intense y'all's like hide and seek got, but
Oh.
Can get quite intense.
I remember one summer I was working at a summer camp, and just to freak people out, we had this massive game of hide and seek.
Mhm.
I put myself in a canoe, hid, and it was hours, and I realized I think they're done.
Oh no!
Oh no, tag,
Oh,
hide and
gosh.
seek, and
Yeah.
right up there.
All right, we also have sardines.
Sardines. So sardines to me is just an excuse to squish up against other people.
Yep.
We used to play a variation at the bottom of a slide.
Okay.
If you go down the slide, the person stays there, and then the next person
Stays
lands
there.
on them
Yep.
and lands on. So sardines to me is really fun because as a kid, it's an excuse to get real close to someone, especially if you have a crush.
Yeah.
So sardines ranked pretty high. I would give it an A.
An A. Okay.
Yeah.
Above the tag or below?
I would put it right below tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
But below freeze tag and capture the flag too, or does it go somewhere in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. It goes. It's all right there.
Okay. Yeah, Grand Admiral asked about sardines too, but basically the idea is that you eventually mimic a sardine can, right? Like you're layered
Exactly.
all on top of each other in some capacity.
And in terms of being dialutic, it's also interesting because you want to. But what are sardines famous for? They stink.
Stinky. Yeah, that's true.
Stink. So it's like it's the attraction repulsion. You want to be squished in a can of sardines, but not next to someone you really don't want to be.
It's very aptly named, isn't it?
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Negotiating exaggeration. Here we go. Right.
There are technically 3 more. I know that there's a bunch of duplicates on these other ones, so there's 3
Okay.
more here. There's duplicates except that the person missed 2. So I'll add those
Okay.
also. Red Rover. Controversial game
Ooh.
on the playgrounds.
Controversial. Yeah, Red Rover. So 2 lines and Red Rover. Try to break through, and then if they break through,
You cut out for a second. Red Rover, and
Oh.
then send someone right over.
someone
You see the name?
over,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And then typically that person has to palm over and try to crash into a line of kids who are holding hands. And there's that ambiguity. Do you want the do you want to block? So that's a really section. Only because of my own ambivalence, but it's a fascinating.
I think you cut out for a second there. Where would you like me to put that?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
In A.
In
Also
A.
in
Okay.
A.
Below sardines in tag or above?
I would put it below sardines.
Okay. Yeah, Red Rover, controversial. Yeah, that I was thinking when we were talking about sardines and like touching bodies, it's kind of another way to touch bodies too, depending on if you make the person hang on your arms.
Yeah.
Will say there was like a group of dudes when I was in undergrad that would play Red Rover on campus with any couple that was like holding hands. And I don't know if it was like frat hazing and they were part of a pledge class or if they were just like, you know, wildin'. But
well, that's interesting. That's a clash of different games going on, right? So you have the lovers who are playing their exclusive mushy game, and these other guys are playing Red Rover. So wow, that's interesting.
All right, we have tetherball.
Tetherball. Loved tetherball as a kid.
Yeah, my grandma had a tetherball in her yard.
Wow.
Like, it was cool. It was like in a cement-filled tire. It was cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, like you could rotate it around. It's like,
does everybody know out there what a tetherball is? Typically, string and a ball, and one person on one side trying to whack it, and the first person who gets it to spin around the pole wins.
Yeah.
So I'm a younger sister, and if you play with your older brother who's much taller than you, it can be an infuriating. Just get the angle right. Very satisfying.
Yes.
I would probably. I would put it again in the A frame.
Okay. The bottom or the top?
I would put it
somewhere
right
in the
after
middle. Oh, you might have frozen. Hello?
Hi there. Can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, in the A level after the tag.
After tag. Okay.
Yeah.
Our little tag group there. Cool.
Yeah.
And the last one on here that I believe is not repeated for this list is pretend.
Ooh.
Just playing pretend.
Number S.
Yeah.
Letter S.
Is it the top of S? Is that super, super, super number one above hide and go seek?
Ooh. Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah. I had a feeling you were going to rank pretend up high because it's just like it can be anything you want. Negotiated.
It's like asking for more genies, you know?
Yeah,
you want to ask how many wishes to get. I want more genies. It's and then you want more wishes. So yeah. Imagination rules.
Oh my gosh. That's wonderful. Did you ever play pretend like an animal? Like Kaitlyn and I talk about like horse girls, wolf girls, dragon girls. Like what else is there's so much
and it's a Venn diagram
cat
that's
girls.
almost a circle.
Yeah, and then they all become folklorists somehow. Yeah,
no surprise.
So good.
No surprise.
Is there anything that you would put on this list that is not represented here that you would say?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million recess games, but what's one or two that you wish that was on here that you would rank?
I'm surprised that there are no jump rope rhymes. Jump rope.
Oh yeah, just like jump rope game. Yeah.
Hopscotch. So this is
hopscotch.
This is a pretty gendered list.
That's true.
This is, so, and it's interesting that pretend is also last. So this is very kind of aggressive and ball set, which is great.
That is,
and jump rope, hand clap, hopscotch, all that stuff.
Yeah,
I would say. I mean, those are the kinds of things that were studied by the great scholars of children's folklore, the Opie. and countless others that totally miss. The other thing that's missing is playing with stuff, playing with things.
Right.
What do kids make? What do they collect? In that Recess Battles book, it was always very seasonal. So, when it was fall, there were leaf games, and in ice, and in the spring, everybody was crazy about that were falling. So, the playing with nature, playing with stuff,
Yeah.
is also missing, making den stuff. So it depends on what you come, what kinds of materials are available. But certainly, jump rope, hand clap, major.
That
And I would put those.
yeah.
I would put those. Somewhere between S and A. I don't know if you want me to
Yeah.
rank them.
Yeah, that'd be somewhere between S and A, like yeah. That's
I would
pretty
say
good.
A and a half. I would put
An
all
A.
those things at A and a half.
I love that. We've invented a new we have had many precedented events related to tier lists, but I don't think we've ever had a half be a, so that's
Hey!
awesome. I love that. We that's very good. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we curate a lot of the lists ourselves because most of the time we're ranking things that don't have an existing tier maker list, but there were a couple different recess ones, and it has to do with how many are on there. Some of them have like 50. And we're like, that's gonna take too long.
Wow.
That's gonna take too long.
For sure.
Some of them are just images, and so like they're a little bit
Oh,
dubious. Our interpretation is like, is that
sure.
whatever. So there were games like Ninja was one,
Yeah.
or like
Sure.
other kinds of games. But it's funny you mentioned that this is very like ball centric and like maybe like kind of more boy games if we're being highly gendered about it, but lacking things like hand games and jump rope games. But that might usually the tier list is like reflective of us in our curation, but this is interesting because it's reflective of who makes tier maker lists, and because they come from fighting games and because there's the huge culture of ranking them like with your friends about video games and stuff. Well, that's also heavily associated with boys, and so I just wonder if there is something to that. So I don't know, I thought that was an interesting intuition.
It would be interesting to do a study of tier lore.
Oh my gosh. It would be very meta. It's
so much data.
So true. I mean, there's some things on here I've seen people rank that I'm just like, wow, like that exists. That's so esoteric. Like, anyway, some of them get very specific. Weirdest? I'm trying to think, like, there are ones on here that are so in-group specific, it's, like, impossible to use by anybody outside of a particular group of friends. Like, rank teachers' outfits or something, or, like, something like that, or, like, I don't know, a lot of them are, like, rank every character in XYZ pop culture, or, like, rank like every team, like football teams or something like that. But we like to make particularly specific and unhinged ones, like famous hedgehogs. We did that one with Brad McMullen one time, for example. So
I like that.
There's all different famous
like
hackers,
bands
grunge
bands. Rank your favorite grunge bands or whatever.
That's good. That's good. And again, it points to the of any kind of play. You need frame.
It's something to like hold on to. Well, Anna, from a scale of pretend to Foursquare, I think we should be imagining more frequently together because this was really fun to have you on.
Awesome. It's very fun for me too.
Yes. I just truly thank you for spending some time with us on this particular evening for slightly longer than perhaps you'd expected. So we'll get you out quick. But just everybody in chat, you know what to do. GGs or ladders for Anna Beresin. That's kind of like our chat applauding you. GGs just is like good game. That's Twitch lingo. And then if they have an emote of our ladder, that's kind of like our channels, like hurrah or like. Prize.
I thought GG was like go gangsta or something.
On Twitch, it means good game, good game. So sometimes people will just have GGs, like good games, good game.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm saying GH, great hosts. So
Oh,
thank you.
GH, that's so sweet. We've had an awesome time with you.
Quilts have had meaning on many levels. Making quilts helped me to get a sense of my own space, sense of finding my way, sense of really working my way out of the labyrinth.